The sun burned high above the plains, pouring its steady gold across the land. And in that light a lone figure walked the dusty road toward a ranch that seemed half forgotten by time itself. She carried nothing but a bundle wrapped in a faded shawl and a skillet tied with a cord, as if her whole life had been boiled down to these few meager things. Her steps were neither hurried nor hesitant, but steady, like one who has lost too much already to be frightened of what lies ahead. The cicadas shrilled in the heat, and the wide sky hung without a cloud, as if the heavens themselves wanted to see whether she would turn back or press forward. The ranch rose from the land in a solemn shape, wood weathered gray by years of sun and wind, windows squinting under the glare. No smoke curled from its chimney, no laughter spilled from its porch, only a silence that seemed carved deep. On that porch stood a man, tall and solid, his shadow stretching across the boards. His hat-brimmed shaded eyes that had grown cautious from solitude. A man of 34 who had learned the weight of loneliness without complaint. At his side, peering out from behind his leg, was a little girl of 6, her hair tangled from the wind, her face half curious, half shy. The woman reached the gate and stopped, dust clinging to her dress, heart thudding with the memory of doors once shut in her face. She lifted her chin slightly, not in pride, but in survival. The cowboy spoke first, his voice low and even, like gravel rolling in a creek. "You came to cook?" She nodded, her lips pressed tight, though her voice emerged soft. "Yes." That's what was asked. His gaze searched her, not unkind, but wary, as if measuring how much trouble might walk through his doorway. At last he opened the gate with a nudge of his boot. "Then come in." The little girl stepped aside, clutching the edge of her father's shirt, eyes wide as though she had never seen a stranger cross their yard. The woman bent her head slightly in greeting, whispering, "Hello, little one," but the child only hid her smile against her father's side. Inside, the house was plain and still, walls lined with shelves where dust gathered in corners. The air smelled of leather, hay, and emptiness. She set her bundle down on the kitchen table, unwrapped her skillet, and rolled up her sleeves. The man lingered in the doorway, watching as if unsure what to expect. The girl tiptoed closer, curiosity outweighing shyness. Her first meal was nothing grand, only beans simmered with onions and a loaf of coarse bread she had baked in the small iron stove. She set the food out quietly, her movements precise, as though this offering might earn her the right to stay another day. The cowboy ate in silence, fork scraping the plate, while his daughter nibbled eagerly, stealing glances at the woman as though memorizing her face. "You can call me Mister," the man said at last, his tone deliberate, drawing a line between them. "And she's just here to cook," he added, glancing at his daughter. The girl's shoulders drooped, though she tried to smile. The widow heard the words like a blade, sharp and final. Just here to cook. She kept her eyes down, swallowing against the ache. Days turned into a rhythm. She rose before the sun, built a fire, and set coffee to brew. She patched a tear in the little girl's dress, though no one asked her. She swept the floor, baked bread, and kept her hands busy so her thoughts would not wander into dangerous longing. The cowboy spoke little. His presence felt more in the weight of silence than in words. Yet she noticed small things, how he refilled the water barrel before she reached for it, how he mended the latch on the kitchen window so it wouldn't rattle at night. He never spoke of these acts, never admitted he saw her labors, but she noticed all the same. The daughter, free of her father's caution, began to follow the widow about like a shadow. She asked questions. "What's your favorite flower? Can you braid hair? Do you like songs?" Questions simple and sweet, yet dangerous for a woman who feared hope. At times the widow would smile and answer. Other times she would turn away, heart trembling, reminding herself she was only a hired hand. It was in town that the cruelty pressed hardest. When she went for flour or soap, she felt eyes following her, whispers hissing like wind through grass. "Cooking at his place, is she? Wonder what else she's doing." Women shook their heads. Men smirked as if they held knowledge of her life they had not earned. Shame coiled in her stomach, the weight of judgment heavier than the flour sack she carried home. When she returned one evening, eyes damp, cheeks smudged with dust. The cowboy looked at her for a long moment. He did not ask, but handed her a dipper of water, his gaze steady. She accepted, drinking slowly, the coolness washing away more than thirst. For a moment, she felt less alone. At supper, the daughter broke the silence with sudden courage. "Why can't you stay forever?" she asked, her little voice hopeful. The widow's spoon stilled. The cowboy's eyes flashed warning, but his voice faltered when he scolded softly. "Don't trouble her with that, sweetheart." The widow's heart ached with the longing hidden in that child's plea. She forced a smile and shook her head. "I'm only here for a while," she whispered, though the words cut her deeper than any blade. Yet the walls began to crack. The cowboy, once content to speak only in commands or cautions, began to ask her questions. Where she had lived, what food she liked best, what songs her mother used to sing. She answered slowly, offering fragments of her story, speaking of loneliness and loss, of nights spent wondering if she mattered at all. He listened without judgment, his silences now filled with something gentler than indifference. One evening, while repairing a fence post, he cut his hand. She saw the blood and without thinking took his hand in hers, wrapping it with cloth. For a long moment she held it, her fingers trembling. He did not pull away. Their eyes met, and though no words passed, something deep and unspoken burned between them. Another night, the daughter made them laugh together, a rare sound that startled even themselves. Laughter spilled awkwardly, like water breaking through a dam, and for the first time the house felt less like a tomb and more like a home. Then came the day when the daughter's longing could no longer be contained. On a golden afternoon, while the widow braided her hair on the porch, the child whispered, "Please stay. Be my mother." The words shook the widow's hands so badly that strands slipped from a braid. She forced a smile, but her eyes filled. "Child, I can't." Behind them, the cowboy froze, the hammer in his hand stilled midair. His jaw tightened, his eyes shadowed with pain. He turned away, unable to speak. The widow's shame deepened when a neighbor stopped by with a smirk. "Looks like you're settling in as his woman after all," the man sneered. Her cheeks burned hot. That evening, her decision came like a flood. She packed her bundle, her skillet tied once more, her shawl folded tight. She would not bear gossip's cruelty, would not be the cause of disgrace. But when she stepped to the gate, the cowboy's voice stopped her, low and raw. "Don't go." She turned, tears on her cheeks. "You know what they say about me, about us. I cannot stay." He stepped closer, his eyes fierce with vulnerability. "Let them talk. You've given life back to this house. I was a man waiting to rot in silence. You've made us whole." Her breath caught, chest trembling. "I was only here to cook." His voice broke, softer now. "You've done more than feed us. You've fed my soul." Tears spilled down her cheeks, her hands trembling as the daughter rushed between them, clutching both with tiny fists. "Please don't leave us. Please." The widow's resolve crumbled. She fell to her knees, arms wrapping the child, sobs breaking free. The cowboy knelt too, his hand on her shoulder, his voice rough with emotion. "I love you. I don't care what they say. I'd rather have your shame beside me than an empty house without you." The widow lifted her face, eyes wide, heart pounding with a mixture of fear and longing. He reached into his pocket, then into a drawer, pulling forth a small silver ring, worn smooth with age. He held it out with shaking hands. "Stay," he whispered. "Not as a cook, not as a guest. Stay as my wife, her mother, my heart." Her lips trembled as she stared at the ring, at the man whose silence had become her shelter, at the child whose hope had broken her defenses. Slowly, she nodded, tears shining in the sunlight. "Yes." The daughter squealed, throwing her arms around them both. Laughter and sobs mingled, and the ranch, once silent as a grave, filled with the sound of life again. The widow slipped the ring onto her finger, feeling its weight like a promise. As the sun lowered over the prairie, painting the land in molten gold, they stood together at the porch. The man's arm wrapped around her shoulders, the child nestled between them, the air alive with a peace neither had known for years. And when the cicadas quieted and the evening breeze cooled the earth, the story's voice turned outward, as if speaking directly to the soul of anyone who would listen. Remember this: love does not come in thunder or in fiery declarations shouted against the sky. It comes in silence, in the small acts of grace that stitch the broken back together. It comes when one stays, even when the world says go. It comes when shame is met not with rejection, but with a hand held out in mercy. And if ever you doubt the worth of quiet kindness, think of a lonely house that found its life again because two souls dared to stay.